Istanbul. The palace is silent. Outside, the Bosphorus glitters in the late afternoon light, gulls circling lazily above. But inside, the air is heavy, heavy with incense, heavy with the hush that follows a great man's passing. Selim Selim the Grim, lies in state. The Sultan who, in just 8 years, had doubled the Ottoman Empire, stretching it from the deserts of Arabia to the rolling hills of the Balkans. The man who brought the holy cities of Mecca and Medina under Ottoman care. Now, he is gone. And the empire, vast, restless, dangerous, turns its eyes to his only son, 26 years old, tall, slender, dark eyes that miss nothing, a mind trained in poetry and politics, in swordsmanship and statecraft. His name, Suleiman. To Europe, he will be known as the Magnificent. To his own people, Kanuni, the Lawgiver. For 46 years, he will lead this empire. He will take it to its greatest height and through some of its deepest heartbreaks. This is not just a tale of battles and borders. It is the story of a ruler who tried to balance power with justice, conquest with culture, love with duty, and it begins on the edge of the Black Sea. Suleiman was born in 1494 in the rugged port city of Trabzon. The Black Sea here is not calm. It is a place of sudden storms, of ships vanishing over the horizon, of traders speaking a dozen languages on the docks. His father, Selim, was then the governor, a man of sharp edges and sharper ambitions. His mother, Hafsa Sultan, was a woman of influence, guiding her son's early education with a steady hand. From the start, Suleiman's world was both provincial and international. He learned to speak Ottoman, Turkish, Arabic, and Persian fluently. He read the Persian epics, the moral tales of Islamic scholars, and the poetry of Jalaluddin Rumi. But this was no soft upbringing. Trabzon was a frontier. Its POs were soldiers, sailors, merchants. Danger was never far away, from pirates in the Black Sea to rival powers in the Caucasus. Suleiman absorbed it all, the need for vigilance, the value of alliances, the weight of command. Like many Ottoman princes, Suleiman was sent away young to learn governance firsthand. At just 15, he was appointed governor of Kaffa, a port in Crimea. There, he watched Genoese merchants barter in the markets and Crimean Tatars raid across the steppes. Later, he was moved to Manisa in western Anatolia, a quieter post, but one that placed him near Istanbul, at the heart of imperial politics. In Manisa, he studied law and administration under seasoned viziers. He learned how tax registers were kept, how judges settled disputes, how orders from the palace were carried out, or quietly ignored. By the time news came in 1520 that his father had died, Suleiman was not an untested youth. He was a ruler in waiting. The transition of power in an empire this large is never smooth, and for Suleiman, the first challenge came almost immediately. In Syria, loyalists of the Mamluk Sultanate, the regime Selim had crushed just 4 years earlier, rose in rebellion. They hoped the young sultan would be cautious, maybe even hesitant. They miscalculated. Suleiman acted swiftly. He dispatched experienced commanders with overwhelming force. The rebellion was crushed in less than a year. Leaders were executed or exiled, and Ottoman authority in the Arab provinces was reaffirmed. The world had its answer. This sultan would not be tested lightly. With the south secure, Suleiman looked west. The first target, Belgrade. This fortress city controlled access to the Hungarian plains. For nearly a century and a half, it had resisted Ottoman siege. In the summer of 1521, Suleiman's army, tens of thousands strong with heavy artillery, surrounded the sea. After weeks of bombardment, the defenders surrendered. The Ottoman flag rose over the ramparts. Belgrade's fall was more than a victory. It was an open door into Central Europe. The next year, Suleiman turned his attention to the island of Rhodes, home to the Knights Hospitaller. These Christian warriors, descendants of the Crusaders, had harassed Ottoman shipping for decades. The siege lasted 6 brutal months. Cannon fire shattered walls. Disease tore through both camps. When the defenders finally yielded, Suleiman offered terms. The knights could depart unharmed, taking their weapons but leaving their fortress. It was both a gesture of honor and a message. The Ottomans could be magnanimous, but they would not tolerate defiance. By 1526, Suleiman's gaze turned fully to Hungary. The young King Louis II led an army to meet him on the plain of Mohács. The battle was over almost before it began. Ottoman artillery devastated the Hungarian lines. Janissary musketeers cut down wave after wave. Ottoman cavalry encircled the enemy. In less than 2 hours, the Hungarian army was destroyed. King Louis drowned while fleeing. Hungary ceased to exist as an independent power. The central part became Ottoman territory. The rest fell to the Habsburgs. Vienna now lay in striking distance. 3 years later, Suleiman marched on the Austrian capital. His army swelled to nearly 120,000, one of the largest Europe had ever seen. But nature had its own plans. Autumn rains turned roads to rivers of mud. Supplies rotted. Cannons became impossible to move. The siege lasted just over 3 weeks before Suleiman withdrew. He had failed to take Vienna, but he had shown Europe that the Ottomans could reach its heart. The psychological shock would last for generations. While Europe focused on Vienna, another front demanded attention. The Safavid Empire of Persia, under Shah Tahmasp, was a rival not only in territory but in faith, Shia Islam against the Ottoman Sunni majority. In 1534, Suleiman led a campaign into Mesopotamia. Baghdad fell without a fig. The Ottomans now controlled the Tigris and Euphrates, and with them, vital trade routes linking east and west. The conquest also carried immense symbolic weight. The lands of the Abbasid caliphs were now under Ottoman rule. But Suleiman's empire was not just a land power. His admiral, Hayreddin Barbarossa, turned the Ottoman navy into the most feared fleet in the Mediterranean. In 1538, at the Battle of Preveza, Barbarossa crushed a coalition of Christian fleets. From Algiers to the Red Sea, Ottoman ships dominated, and even in the Indian Ocean, Portuguese power began to feel their reach. Conquest was only half the story. Suleiman saw himself as a ruler of order, not just a conqueror. Working with the jurist Ebu Suud Effendi, he reformed the empire's legal system. His Kanuni names, law codes, blended Sharia with practical governance. They regulated taxes, land use, and justice, ensuring that the Sultan's authority reached from the smallest village to the grandest city. These laws outlived him, shaping Ottoman administration for centuries. Under Suleiman, Istanbul became a city of marvels. He commissioned bridges, aqueducts, and caravanserais. The crowning jewel was the Suleymaniye Mosque, designed by Mimar Sinan, a masterpiece of stone and light, its domes echoing with the call to prayer. Suleiman himself was a poet, writing under the name Muhibbi. His verses, often dedicated to Hürrem Sultan, reveal a man of deep feeling and spiritual reflection. Hürrem was no ordinary consort. Born in what is now Ukraine, captured and sold into slavery, she rose to become Suleiman's wife, breaking centuries of tradition. Her influence was immense. She corresponded with foreign leaders, built charitable foundations, and shaped palace politics. But her rise deepened the rift between Suleiman's sons. Prince Mustafa, Suleiman's eldest son by another consort, was beloved by the army. Many saw him as the natural heir. In 1553, while on campaign against Persia, Suleiman summoned Mustafa to his tent. There, guards seized him and strangled him with a bowstring. The official charge was treason. Whether true or the result of court intrigue remains debated, but the shock was profound, in the army, in the empire, and within the Sultan himself. In 1559, another son, Bayezid, rebelled against his father's choice of heir, Selim II. The rebellion failed. Bayezid fled to Persia, where he was eventually handed over and executed in 1561. Suleiman had secured the succession, but at the price of burying 2 of his sons. By 1566, Suleiman was 71. Illness racked his body, but he refused to remain in Istanbul. He rode once more into Hungary, laying siege to the fortress of Szigetvar. The defenders fought with desperate courage. In the midst of the siege, Suleiman died in his tent, still commanding his army, still on campaign. His death was kept secret until the fortress fell. Suleiman left behind an empire at its zenith, rich, orderly, feared, and admired. His reign blended the sword with the pen, the mosque with the cannon, the poet's heart with the ruler's will. But the seeds of future struggles were there. in the costly wars, the succession disputes, the reliance on a single, untested heir. To some, he was the greatest of sultans. To others, the man whose brilliance marked the beginning of the empire's long decline. History remembers him as both,